Connor felt the first impact through his knees before he heard it, a blunt shudder that ran up the maintenance ladder and into his jaw, while the hull lights snapped from white to blood amber and stayed there. He had one glove off, 2 fingers on a manual bypass wheel, and a mouthful of copper from biting his tongue when the ship-wide translator band cracked alive across his collarbone with 3 voices stacked over each other, all of them asking for Apex authorization that had not arrived yet. The second impact came harder, sharp enough to kick dust out of seam gaskets. Status text rolled across the conduit wall in old military script he could read only halfway without his lens, and even in half language it told him enough. Hull compromise in Sector 12, then Sector 19, then Sector 4 in the span of 12 seconds. 3 whole sectors. Whoever tracked debris had missed a dense cluster, and the vigilant Crown had run straight through it like a knife through sleet. He slammed his glove back on and listened for Rose Rivera's command channel, because every emergency reroute on this vessel still hinged on one signature and one voice. And no one moved until Apex rank confirmed. The line stayed open with breathing, static, and clipped status packets. No command code. Crew voices kept stacking, each request turning more urgent, and Connor felt the same sick delay he had seen all week. 12 trained officers waiting for a single throat to clear before they saved their own compartments. When Rose finally cut into the channel, her voice carried that iron flat cadence that froze people into obedience, even through translation lag. Connor had heard it once, when she stopped a reactor panic with 4 words and a look. He expected direct orders now. He expected complete control. Instead, her next sentence hit him harder than the hull strike. Civilian contractor Connor Patel holds temporary authority for coolant and pressure routing on my code until hull stabilization. Every line on his panel unlocked at once. The hesitation that had trapped him for 7 days vanished in one legal phrase. Before that sentence, he could diagnose and warn and wait while compartments cooked. After that sentence, he could touch the system and make it obey. He swallowed once, tapped his grounding rhythm on the metal rail, thumb, ring finger, thumb, and forced air down to the bottom of his lungs. "Copy," he said into his band. "If this goes wrong, tell my invoice department I died employed." One of the junior engineers barked a laugh in his ear at exactly the wrong time, which meant people were still people on this ship, and not yet ghosts. Connor took that as good news. He spun the bypass wheel, killed digital valve authority before bus desync could rip the manifold seals, and bridged pressure, manually, across 2 coolant trunks that had never been meant to share load. He had tested that bridge in simulation loops at 3 in the morning while everyone else slept. The system coughed, lurched, and held. A pressure alarm in Sector 12 dropped from critical to unstable. 30 seconds later, Sector 4 followed. Sector 19 hung high enough to make his back teeth ache, and he heard Rose breathing once over comms, one hard inhale that sounded almost like pain before she spoke again. "Patel, Sector 19? He checked flow, did the math on the fly, and saw the only path left involved venting reserve coolant from a lab wing that housed delicate xenobiology samples worth more than his entire contract. He waited a heartbeat, because that call carried political consequences he could smell from 3 decks away, and the translator band delayed just enough that he knew she had heard his hesitation. "Vent labs," she said. "Save crew." He executed before anyone else could object. Sector 19 dropped below rupture threshold, and the whole vessel gave one long groan like a tired animal deciding to stay alive. By the time emergency lights shifted from blood amber to caution orange, Connor's hands shook hard enough that he had to wedge them under his arms. He could hear cheering in one compartment and angry shouting in another. which told him exactly what he had protected and exactly what he had just destroyed. The command channel ended without ceremony. No one thanked him. On this ship, nobody thanked people during emergencies because gratitude sounded like weakness. He leaned his forehead against the conduit wall, eyes closed, and Rose's last, private ping hit his band on encrypted whisper. You moved before fear completed its sentence. He did not answer right away because the line between professional and personal had already gone thin, and the whole reason this moment mattered sat 7 days in the past when he first stepped aboard and realized the largest problem on the Vigilant Crown was not metal, fuel, or distance. The largest problem was permission. On transit day 118 of year 2237, Connor Patel arrived in a borrowed utility harness that did not fit his shoulders and a contract stamped for 21 days exactly. He came through Dock Collar C with 2 duffels, 1 case of analog tools old enough to insult everybody under 30, and a subcontract profile that got him flagged by security before his boots touched deck. Civilian. Temporary. Systems maintenance only. No command access. No tactical clearance. The Vigilant Crown carried 312 primary crew on paper, more if you counted rotating specialists and cargo passengers who pretended they were not scared of long transit. Connor counted heads the way mechanics counted bolts, not because he enjoyed numbers, because numbers told him how many people might die when a pipe failed, and no one moved. He had spent 7 years crawling through industrial stations where manuals looked clean and reality looked scorched. He trusted hiss, vibration, heat, and the smell of wiring long before he trusted a report. Ilya Sen met him at intake with a translator cuff and the exhausted smile of someone who had explained the same political rules too many times. Ilya handled human xenolinguistics, which made her the bridge between Connor's blunt dockyard speech and the vessel's layered command dialects. You will hear 1 second lag when technical jargon crosses species packets, she told him while fitting the cuff. If Commander Rivera says hold, you hold. If she asks a question, answer clean. No jokes until she chooses one first. Connor looked at the cuff, then at the ceiling high enough to swallow weather, and gave her his best compliance face. I am famous for not joking under stress. Ilya deadpanned. I reviewed your prior audio logs. That statement failed translation. He learned the hierarchy before he learned the hallways because wrong eye contact could outrank correct wiring. The vessel ran a military-civilian hybrid chain where transit law concentrated emergency authority in apex rank, a model built for speed during combat lanes and inherited by cargo carriers that still feared piracy. On paper, it prevented conflicting orders. In practice, it built bottlenecks whenever incidents multiplied. By day 119, Connor saw the bottleneck with brutal clarity when a coolant leak in med support should have triggered an immediate reroute, and 3 officers stood frozen, waiting for Rose's signature while temperature climbed. Before that moment, he assumed delay came from incompetence. After that moment, he understood delay came from structure, and his anger changed target. He patched the leak with a temporary clamp and watched a medic wipe sweat off her neck with shaking hands. Why didn't you reroute from secondary loop? He asked. She glanced at his civilian badge like it was radioactive. Secondary loop feeds command deck. Apex authorization required. He stared at the panel, at the harmless command route that could have spared her 10 minutes of fear and stored the answer away. The ship did not lack intelligence. It lacked distributed permission. Rose Rivera entered his world on day 120 during a reactor thermal drift event that made the whole engineering block smell like hot ceramic and old lightning. Connor was inside Manifold Bay 3, elbow deep in a valve nest designed by someone who hated human wrists, when alarms climbed through 3 tones and stopped at the one tone people never forgot after they heard it once. He followed personnel into central engineering and saw her across a ring of officers, taller than him by half a head, shoulders narrow but rigid, skin carrying the subtle bronze-green sheen of her species under cold lighting. Her jawline bore sensory frill ridges that could flare to read heat and chemical traces. Right now, those ridges stayed tight to bone, which Ilya had told him meant restraint, not calm. Her eyes had a second clear lid she used when sparks flew, and during the drift, she blinked that lid down while staring at 3 feed projections at once, reading streams faster than his cuff could translate. Dominance did not come from volume with her. Dominance came from certainty. Officers delivered options. She discarded 2 with a hand tilt, accepted 1, revised it in 6 words, and everyone moved. Connor felt his own posture straighten from pure mammal reflex even while he resented himself for it. The reactor drift crossed 7% above safe baseline, while command engineers argued software reconciliation windows. Connor stared at the digital bus charts and saw desync bloom in a pattern he had seen in cheaper station plants, where control buses agreed in theory and lied under thermal expansion. The engineers wanted to stabilize in software first. Connor knew software had already fallen behind physics. He asked for panel access. Nobody answered him. He raised his voice. Your bus handshake is drifting faster than your update cycle. Kill digital authority and bridge pressure physically across A and C trunks. One engineer looked offended that a subcontractor had spoken in his hearing. That bridge violates manufacturer architecture. Connor held his stare. So does exploding. Rose turned to Connor for the first time, and her focus felt like standing in front of an inspection beam. Can you execute within 2 minutes? The hesitation he had to resolve sat in that one question. He could see the fix. He could not touch a command panel without permission, and every second made the choice narrower. Before her question, he remained a witness with opinions. After her question, he became accountable. I can execute in 90 seconds if nobody grabs my arm, he said. She keyed open the barrier and gave one order that made room around him. Connor moved. He dumped digital valve control before the desync spike hit critical, pulled an analog pressure bridge from his toolcase, and cross-fed coolant through a manual manifold pathway that existed for dock testing, not flight emergencies. The metal screamed at first contact, then settled into a deeper, steadier thrum. Drift dropped from red to orange and kept falling. When the numbers stabilized, no one applauded. Engineers stared at the bridge like it had insulted their education. Rose looked at the board, at Connor, and finally at the bridge again. Document his method, she told her chief engineer. Temporary authorization for Patel on relevant systems until manifold replacement is complete. That sentence changed Connor's status from tolerated outsider to necessary complication, which gave him access to failing machinery and earned him enemies in formal uniforms. He noticed Marshal Vectorin noticing him from the security ring, face expressionless, crest tattoos rigid along his neck in the vessel's rank pattern. Vec believed in hierarchy the way welders believed in gravity, and Connor had just bypassed both at once. Connor ended his shift with grease under his nails and 3 new comm requests from officers who had ignored him an hour earlier. He declined 2 and answered one from Ilya, who sounded less surprised than relieved. Congratulations, she said. You solved the engineering problem. Feels like there is a second problem. There are always 2 on this ship. Metal and people. The people problem surfaced on day 121 near ship night, when Connor got sent to a chart room annex to check a dead interface line that looked dead because nobody had used it in years. He expected dust and obsolete wiring. He opened the hatch and found Rose Rivera sitting on the floor against a projection pillar, back straight from habit, eyes shut under lowered inner lids, translator band off, command coat folded beside her like evidence she had stepped out of her own life for 5 minutes. He froze in the doorway because every instinct said retreat and pretend he had seen nothing, while a different instinct, older and less polite, noticed the tremor in her hand where it rested on her knee. Connor had grown up around shift workers who pushed too far until their bodies staged mutiny. He recognized that tremor. Her eyes opened, without the startle he expected. Those sensory ridges along her jaw flicked once, reading his sweat, machine oil, and hesitation in a single breath. "You are off route, Patel." Dead interface line at panel 6. He lifted his scanner as proof, then heard himself ask, "When did you last sleep?" She held his gaze long enough that he thought she might order security to erase this conversation. 46 hours awake. The admission changed everything for him in one line, and he said so in plain terms later to Ilya because the logic mattered. Before he knew the number, her control looked like pure appetite for authority. After he heard 46 hours awake, her control looked like a failing strategy to keep panic from spreading faster than information. Connor stepped inside and shut the hatch halfway without locking it, giving privacy without secrecy, the kind of compromise you learned when trust was new and fragile. "I can fix panel 6 in 10 minutes, he said. "You can sit here and close your eyes for 8 of them, and I will cough if anyone comes." A faint movement touched the corner of her mouth, not a smile, more like she remembered the shape of one. "You give orders to Apex rank now?" "No, Commander. I give maintenance estimates." She closed her eyes again. Connor worked slower than he needed, so the minutes stretched. He listened to her breathing, even out while his hands soldered a line that did not matter much to anybody except maybe the two of them. He expected consequences the next morning. Instead, he got a secure message assigning him to expanded manifold replacement and a note signed by Rose herself. Concise, professional, nothing personal, plus one line that sounded like a truce. "Your repair in Annex 6 prevented navigation lag on archived star maps. Efficient work." On day 122, he started treating her like a person who got tired, not a title that never bent. He did it in small ways that could pass as maintenance habits if anyone watched too closely. He sent caffeine and electrolyte packets to command under the excuse of thermal regulation support. He rewired one lighting strip near her station to lower glare during long shifts. He stopped using formal flourishes in private technical channels and spoke to her the way he spoke to senior mechanics who had earned respect and forgotten how to ask for help. Rose tested this behavior before she trusted it. She asked pointed technical questions at odd hours to check whether he was competent or flattering. He answered with numbers and uncertainty where uncertainty existed. She challenged his assumptions in front of engineers to see if he crumpled under public correction. He adjusted, defended what mattered, conceded what did not. She sent him a deliberately ambiguous reroute request through translator lag. He replied with 2 interpretations and forced her to choose, which annoyed her enough to prove she had heard him. Their conversations moved from commands to exchanges. He learned her species tasted atmospheric chemistry through the jawline frill, which explained why she always knew when a coolant line was close to failing before sensors flagged it. She learned he tapped thumb ring thumb on metal when stress climbed, a ritual he picked up after a refinery fire years ago where counting taps kept his breathing from sprinting ahead of his hands. Trust on the vigilant crown had political weight, and weight always attracted opposition. Sarah Knox logistics controller, ran protocol like a blade. She had the kind of smile that warmed room temperature and chilled everyone in it. Connor met her in Corridor 7 while carrying a manifold coil and learned in 1 minute why Ilya lowered her voice whenever Sarah's name came up. "Mr. Patel," Sarah said through flawless translator harmonics, "civilian contractors are assigned to hardware only. You are increasingly visible in command channels. Visibility creates misunderstandings." Connor balanced the coil on his hip. "Hardware keeps starting conversations. Conversations create liabilities." She stepped aside without breaking eye contact. Liabilities trigger reviews. He kept walking because he had learned that pausing in front of people like Sarah counted as permission. That evening, Ilya found him near Coolant Bay and told him what Sarah had filed. Protocol violations, unauthorized influence on Apex decision flow, improper private contact, potential compromise of chain integrity. Paperwork wrapped as concern, time to isolate Rose and expel Connor before his 21-day contract could become anything more dangerous than temporary labor. The obstacle resolved by that filing was not legal confusion. Everyone understood exactly what Sarah wanted. She needed Rose cut off from the one person feeding her unfiltered technical truth. Before the filing, rumors were noise. After the filing, gossip became an instrument with signatures attached. Connor laughed once without humor. "I fix pipes. How is that sedition?" Ilya looked tired in a way that matched Rose. "On this vessel, access is politics. You gave her information without asking what she would trade for it. That unsettles people who survive by controlling what reaches her." He wanted to tell Ilya he had no interest in court games, that he would finish his manifold job and leave at contract end. His own instincts betrayed him before he could shape the words, because when people he respected were cornered, he stayed, even when staying made life harder. Marshal Vek Torin made the threat direct the next morning. He intercepted Connor at a security checkpoint and dismissed the guards with a gesture that carried more rank than volume. "You mistake tolerance for standing," Vek said. "If Apex falls, civilians are first to be cut loose." Connor checked the wall clock out of habit, partly to keep his face neutral. "If Apex falls, everyone gets cut loose." Vek's crest tattoos tightened, a species Tel Connor had learned to read as irritation. "You are not part of this hierarchy." "Agreed," Connor said. "I am part of the cooling system." He walked away before Vek could make it a detainment. The ship gave him no time to dread. Day 125 brought the debris strike, the same sequence that had opened this story with steel shaking and comm channels overrun. Knowing what came before made Rose's delegation hit differently when it arrived over open line. She had survived a mutiny attempt in 2023 by centralizing authority until nothing moved without her. That strategy kept her alive and kept enemies guessing, while it also trapped 312 crew behind one cognitive bottleneck that no single person could sustain forever. During the strike, she faced her core hesitation and named it out loud in action, not confession. Before that moment, she could not delegate critical live decisions without reliving the mutiny risk. After that moment, she handed Connor temporary authority in front of the whole vessel because saving crew demanded distributed trust more than symbolic control. When he vented labs to save Sector 19, Sarah's allies logged property loss. When pressure stabilized across all 3 impact zones, med teams logged 0 fatalities from thermal breach. Numbers entered the same record in different columns, and the tribunal would decide which column mattered more. After emergency containment, Connor reported to debrief in a room designed to make civilians feel small. Rose sat at the head, Vek on her right, Sarah on her left, Ilya at translation terminal with fingers poised over 3 language streams. Connor stood without being told because there was no seat for contractors. Sarah opened with polished concern. A civilian made command decisions resulting in classified sample venting. This aligns with my filed protocol risks. Connor felt every eye on him and kept his voice level. Commander gave the order to vent labs. I executed it because Sector 19 would have ruptured inside 2 minutes. Sarah's smile stayed thin. Your estimate? Rose answered before Connor could. My decision. Silence followed, tight enough to creak. Vec pushed next. Apex delegation in live combat conditions may invite future overreach. Rose turned her head a fraction. Her frill ridges remained flat, unreadable. Marshal, overreach did not breach 3 hull sectors. Debris did. Patel acted within authority I granted and preserved crew survival margin. Connor watched Vec absorb that without visible surrender. He understood in that instant that Vec's conflict with him had never been personal. Vec defended a paradigm where order prevented collapse. Connor had proved a different paradigm under fire, one where controlled improvisation bought seconds, formal chains could not. The 2 models would keep grinding against each other long after this meeting ended. Rose dismissed them all except Ilya and Connor. Except door seals engaged with a soft hiss, and the room's posture shifted from courtroom to something closer to honest conversation. You are now central to the inquiry record, Rose said, voice lower without audience. Sarah's protocol case has been consolidated with a logistics discrepancy flagged during debris response, and her request to remove you is stayed until tribunal findings. Ilya pulled up ledgers, projected in pale blue. Emergency reserve manifest did not match actual storage in 2 bays. Sarah's office signed both inventories. Connor frowned. You are saying she filed against me while her numbers were cooked. I am saying inquiry opens on day 126, Rose replied. Formal review removes immediate pressure from your status and freezes her protocol petition. He let out a breath he had not realized he held. The immediate danger shifted from his expulsion to Sarah's defense, which gave them space and created new enemies in quieter corridors. Rose looked at him for a long moment, longer than protocol liked. Your contract remains at 21 days under original terms. I can request amendment for Provisional Civilian Systems Advisor until manifold replacements and contingency training are complete. Limited status, no strategic vote, protected transit credentials under my office. Connor rubbed the heel of his hand against his sternum, where stress liked to settle. He had wanted anonymity and peace when he boarded. He had wanted 3 weeks, decent pay, and no entanglements heavier than coolant tubing. Staying meant political heat, formal limits, and waking each day inside a hierarchy that could crush him by accident while trying to protect itself. He also knew what became possible if he stayed. Before his arrival, command and engineering spoke through filters that distorted bad news until it turned lethal. After his arrival and Rose's delegation, a direct technical channel existed between deck reality and Apex decisions. Leaving now would close it right when it started to work. He met her gaze. Limited status is fine. I want it written that I can speak technical risk directly, even when that risks offending uniforms. Ilya almost smiled while typing. Rose inclined her head, the smallest formal acknowledgement he had seen from her. Granted. He pressed his authorization mark to the amendment before either of them could retreat into caution, converting his remaining contractor term into provisional advisor status under Apex protection. Paperwork moved faster than feelings on the vigilant crown, yet feelings leaked through machinery anyway. Over the next shift cycle, crew who had ignored Connor now nodded in corridors, some with gratitude, some with suspicion, many with both. Engineers requested walkthroughs of the analog pressure bridge he used during the reactor drift and debris strike. Connor taught the method with blunt caveats temporary fix, high manual load, dangerous if misread, while Rose stood in the back of one session, saying nothing and listening to junior officers ask him questions they would have mocked a week earlier. Sarah Knox left command traffic 2 days later under formal inquiry escort, still impeccably composed, still dangerous, still insisting protocol would vindicate her. Her case to expel Connor remained suspended inside the same tribunal file as the Manifest Fraud Review, which ended her immediate leverage even before final judgment. The immediate contest ended without spectacle. Vectorin acknowledged Connor's new status in one sentence at security intake and never offered warmth, which counted as progress. Advisor Patel, your access bans are active for designated systems. Connor nodded. Marshal. That exchange resolved their active standoff because the security obstacle had been specific. Before Vec accepted the legal amendment, guards could challenge Connor's presence at any door and burn critical minutes. After Vec accepted it, Connor could reach failing systems without litigating his existence in each corridor. Rose's vulnerability remained the quieter thread, less visible than tribunal notices, and more dangerous if mishandled. She still carried the mutiny scar from 2,234 in habits nobody discussed openly, double-checking personal command codes, sitting where she could see every exit, waking at minor hull noises before alarms acknowledged them. The debris delegation had not erased that scar. It had only given it a new outlet. One controlled transfer of trust she repeated in smaller operational calls as the ship settled back into rhythm. Connor never tried to cure any of it. He had learned from his own history that scars responded poorly to speeches. He offered practical care with clear edges. He set up a rotating command nutrition schedule that bypassed ceremonial meals she kept skipping. He tuned translator settings so technical channels prioritized direct speech over diplomatic smoothing when she spoke with engineering. He left one insulated mug outside her side office each ship night with electrolytes and no note. She returned the mug cleaned every time. The most intimate conversation they had came in a maintenance crawlway where nobody important ever walked. She found him rerouting a stubborn sensor line and crouched beside him, command coat replaced by utility jacket, rank tabs removed. In that narrow space, she looked less like the vessel's apex and more like a woman who had held too much weight too long. You treated me as tired before I admitted it to myself, she said quietly. Why? Connor tightened a coupling to avoid answering too fast. My mother ran double shifts in a refinery canteen. People praised her work ethic while she forgot meals and lost words mid-sentence. I learned praise can hide neglect. Rose watched his hands. In my culture, showing fatigue at rank altitude invites challenge. In mine, pretending you are infinite gets you killed by preventable mistakes. She absorbed that without defense. The crawlway fan hummed above them, warm and constant, and Connor felt the odd steadiness that came when two people from incompatible worlds found one shared rule and decided to use it. By transit day, 126 shipboard life had not turned simple, and nobody sane expected it to. Inquiry boards still argued over manifests. Command factions still tracked who gained or lost proximity to Rose. Vec still measured Connor like a structural crack that might widen. Ilya still translated 2 languages and 3 agendas in each meeting, protecting clarity where she could, and warning Connor when idioms carried hidden knives. What changed was operational truth. The crew had seen Rose delegate in the worst moment and watch the ship survive. They had seen a civilian mechanic solve failures formal channels had failed to catch in time. They had seen Apex rank hold authority while allowing one ordinary human to speak plainly into the center of decision. That combination unsettled old habits, while it also gave the vessel a workable framework for the next emergency. Connor ended the cycle in Observation Bay 5 with a view of stars that looked close enough to scratch. Rose joined him without escort, which would have sparked scandal in week 1, and barely raised eyebrows now that inquiry traffic consumed gossip oxygen. She stood beside him, hands clasped behind her back by training until she noticed, and let them rest at her sides. "Your amended status begins next shift," she said. "Your departure option at the original contract end remains on file, and your decision to stay through manifold completion is now active in command records." He gave a small laugh. "You make that sound like a vacation package." "It is not." "No," he said, watching reflected starlight move across the glass. "It is work." She turned toward him, sensory ridges catching the bay's blue light. "Shared work." He nodded once. Neither reached for promises bigger than they could hold. The ship remained a political minefield running on old fear and new adjustments. Her rank remained dangerous altitude. His position remained precarious by design. The bond between them sat inside those facts, not outside them, built from delegated authority, practical care, and one long week where each learned the other could be trusted when systems failed and time ran short. As they stood there, Connor's band pinged with a routine maintenance alert from Sector 4, minor pressure oscillation, not urgent yet, likely a valve seat settling after repairs. He checked it, sent a note to engineering, and forwarded a concise risk summary to Rose with no ceremony. She read it, approved his proposed adjustment, and signed in under 10 seconds. Before day 118, that loop would have taken 10 minutes and 6 anxious permissions. Now it took one clear report and one decision shared across trust, earned in fire. The vessel moved forward carrying 312 lives, unresolved politics, and a command structure slightly less brittle than the one Connor first stepped into. Rose remained apex rank on paper and in every room that needed decisive authority. Connor remained the outsider who entered for a 21-day contract and stayed under signed provisional status because one exhausted commander finally had someone near her who treated her title with respect and her fatigue with honesty.